I went over to fix a dripping faucet, but what I found was a woman holding more than a leaky sink together. The story opens with the narrator's quiet afternoon. A 24-year-old college graduate, recently freelancing as a handyman to cover his bills. He's practical but has a habit of noticing small things, the way sunlight falls on chipped paint, the sound of a kettle humming in another room. This observant quality will guide how he sees her later. He gets an unexpected call from Elena, his friend's mother. She's 43, recently managing the house on her own while her son is away for work. Her voice on the phone is calm, yet carries a trace of hesitation, as if asking for help feels unfamiliar. She explains there's a leak under the kitchen sink that's gotten worse overnight. The narrator hesitates for a second. This isn't just another client. He's known of her for years, but never spent much time alone with her. He remembers her from quick visits to his friend's house. Elegant, even in casual clothes. Always with an air of composed warmth. There's no hint of romantic thought yet. Just a respectful curiosity about a woman who seems self-possessed, yet quietly tired around the edges. When he arrives at the house, describe the atmosphere to anchor the audience. The late afternoon lights streaming through tall windows, the faint scent of brewed coffee lingering in the hallway, the soft hum of an old ceiling fan. These sensory details set up a space that feels lived in and intimate, not staged. Elena greets him at the door wearing a simple slate blue cardigan rolled at the sleeves, her hair loosely tied back as if she had been in the middle of chores. Her smile is polite but brief, and there's a faint crease on her forehead that suggests she's been worrying about the leak, or maybe about something else. As he steps inside, note his inner thoughts, the way her presence feels steady, the contrast between her graceful composure and the small domestic chaos of towels under the sink. These observations hint at layers in her character without spelling them out. The initial interaction is practical. She shows him the kitchen sink and apologizes for the mess. He kneels to inspect the leak, the cool tile pressing against his palms, water dripping in irregular beads into a steel bowl she had placed there. Their conversation stays light. She asks if he still sketches in his free time, remembering a detail from years ago. He's surprised she recalls that, and it sparks the first glimmer of connection, an older woman noticing the small things about him. Keep the mood subtle but gently warm. As he works, he notices her standing near the counter, arms folded loosely, her gaze distant as though her mind is elsewhere. When their eyes meet briefly, there's no overt tension, just a quiet recognition, as if they're both aware that this is the first real conversation they've shared. The keynote closes on a soft, emotional note. After tightening the pipe to slow the leak, he wipes his hands on a towel she hands him. Their fingers brush for a split second, no deliberate move, only the natural closeness of two people sharing a confined space. That fleeting touch lingers in his awareness more than he expects. A few days later, the narrator returns to Elena's house to finish sealing the pipe properly. It's late afternoon again, the kind of hour when the sun filters low through the curtains, softening the edges of every shadow. The world outside feels hushed, no traffic noise, just the occasional chirp of sparrows outside the kitchen window. That stillness makes the moment feel suspended in time. He knocks gently. This time, Elena opens the door with a faintly surprised smile, as if she hadn't expected him so soon. She's in a light cream blouse with the sleeves rolled up, hair down in loose waves around her shoulders. Not dressed up, but somehow elegant in a way that makes him notice her more than before. The air in the house carries the warm, comforting scent of cinnamon and toasted bread. A kettle hisses softly in the background. She offers him tea before he even sets down his toolbox, and that small gesture, the kind that says you're welcome here, breaks some of the formality that hovered during their first meeting. At the kitchen table, while the tea steeps, their conversation starts lightly. Weather, work, little comments about how the stubborn leak gave her a restless night. But gradually, Elena opens up. She mentions how the house feels quieter since her son moved to another city for work. Her words are casual, but her voice softens at the edges, revealing a quiet ache of loneliness that she's grown accustomed to hiding. The narrator listens more than he speaks, sensing that what she really needs is someone willing to hear her without judgment. He asks thoughtful questions, nothing prying, just enough to let her know he cares about her words. This sets the emotional tone. Their bond grows not through big dramatic moments, but through simple acts of attention and presence. While he kneels again by the sink to reseal the pipe, she stays nearby, leaning against the counter. The proximity feels different now, less like a homeowner watching over repairs and more like a friend who wants to stay close. There's a comfortable quiet between them, broken only by the occasional clink of his wrench or her stirring the tea. A soft moment arises when she kneels briefly beside him to hold the flashlight steady so he can tighten a stubborn joint. Their shoulders almost brush. He catches a faint trace of her citrus and soap scent each time she shifts slightly to adjust the angle of the light. There's no explicit move, only a gentle awareness of each other's closeness. When the work is done, Elena thanks him with genuine warmth, handing him a steaming cup of tea as they both sit down at the small kitchen table. The late sunlight paints a golden outline along her profile, and he notices how the expression in her eyes is softer now, less guarded. They share a quiet laugh over his clumsy way of wiping sealant off his hands with a napkin that tears too easily. For a brief second, their fingers meet again as she offers a sturdier towel. This time, their eyes meet too, and something unspoken lingers there. Curiosity, maybe, or a recognition of the fragile warmth that's starting to bloom between them. The keynote ends with the narrator leaving as dusk gathers outside. While walking away, he feels unexpectedly lighter, realizing that what drew him back wasn't just the leaky sink, but the sense of calm he'd felt sitting across from her in the fading sunlight. A few days after his second visit, a light rain rolls in during the early morning and lingers all afternoon. By evening, the narrator's phone buzzes with a message from Elena. "Sorry to bother you again. There's a small damp spot on the ceiling above the pantry. Not sure if it's serious." Her words are polite but cautious. He senses the hesitation, as if she doesn't want to appear helpless. Without overthinking, he grabs his toolkit and drives over. The roads glisten from the rain, the sky bruised purple with clouds, the streetlights casting pale halos on the wet pavement, all of which mirrors the story's calm but slightly tense mood. When he arrives, Elena greets him with an umbrella still in her hand. The hallway smells faintly of fresh rain carried in on her cardigan. She apologizes again, and he reassures her with an easy smile. "That's what I'm here for." His tone is light, but inwardly he's noticing the worry tucked behind her polite expression. Inside, the house feels cozier because of the rain. The kitchen window is fogged around the corners. Somewhere in the living room, a lamp with a warm amber glow spills a soft circle of light across the floor. That homely warmth becomes an emotional counterpoint to her unease. They walk to the pantry where a thin, uneven watermark has formed on the white ceiling panel. She sighs quietly, crossing her arms as though bracing herself for bad news. The narrator notices how she rubs her thumb over the edge of her sleeve, a small, unconscious gesture that betrays her nerves. He fetches a stepladder from the garage, and as he steadies it, Elena instinctively places her hand near his arm as if to help balance him. The gesture is brief but tender, a sign of concern rather than romance, though it makes him unexpectedly aware of the warmth of her presence. Climbing up, he inspects the area and finds a minor leak from an old joint in the attic piping. Nothing alarming, but it needs sealing soon. As he explains the situation, she relaxes, the tension in her shoulders easing a little. She thanks him in a softer voice, almost like an exhale. To keep the mood light, he jokes gently about becoming a full-time resident plumber. That earns a real laugh from her, the first genuine one he's heard since their conversations began. It's a small breakthrough, the kind that reveals how comfort grows in slow, unforced increments. The rain grows steadier outside, drumming lightly against the windows as he patches the joint temporarily. She stands at the bottom of the ladder, steadying it with both hands, looking up to watch his work. Their eyes meet briefly when he glances down to hand her a roll of tape. There's no dramatic pause, only a spark of mutual trust that comes from teamwork. Afterward, Elena insists on brewing coffee as a thank you. They sit at the dining table, mugs warming their hands, listening to the rain. She admits she's been feeling the weight of keeping up the house alone. Her voice carries neither self-pity nor complaint, just an honesty that feels rare. The narrator doesn't rush to fill the silence. He lets her words sit there, and when he finally responds, it's simply, "You've held it together better than most would." That quiet reassurance earns him a glance from her, steady, thoughtful, touched. The keynote ends with them sharing that still moment. Rain outside, coffee cooling in their hands, the house feeling a little less heavy for both of them. It marks the first time their connection goes beyond neighborly help and into genuine emotional closeness. The rain finally clears the next afternoon, leaving the air fresh and cool. Low clouds scatter across a pale sunset sky, and the wet leaves along the driveway glisten with hints of amber and green. The narrator stops by to check the patched ceiling. No new damp spots, just a faint stain that will need repainting later. Elena thanks him for coming again, her voice lighter this time. With the storm behind them, the house feels more open, and so does she. Her hair is still slightly damp from having stepped outside earlier, and loose strands frame her face in soft curls. She seems more at ease than in their first meetings, still reserved, but with a gentler edge to her smile. When he's done with the quick inspection, Elena suggests a short walk to enjoy the fresh air before it gets dark. At first, he hesitates, not wanting to intrude on her personal time, but her invitation carries a warmth that makes it hard to refuse. They step outside into the quiet street. The pavement is still dark with rainwater, and a few puddles mirror the soft gold of streetlights flickering on. The evening has that calm, almost suspended quality that comes after a storm, as if everything around them is quietly taking a breath. They walk side by side, not too close, just enough that their shoulders sometimes catch each other's shadow. The narrator notices the faint scent of rain still clinging to her cardigan and the soft crunch of wet gravel under their shoes. Their conversation begins with light remarks about the weather and the stubborn sink, but gradually shifts. Elena shares a story about planting roses in the backyard years ago with her son, describing how the two of them used to compete to see whose plant would bloom first each spring. Her voice softens when she mentions those days, and there's a small wistful laugh that follows. The narrator listens quietly, picturing the scene she paints. He finds himself admiring not just her memory, but the way her face lights up when she talks about something she loves. That subtle change in her expression feels more revealing than her words. At one point, as they pause near a hedge dripping with leftover rain, she brushes a strand of hair from her face and glances at him with a thoughtful look, not searching for anything, simply present in the shared silence. The air feels charged in a quiet, unspoken way, not with any overt romance, but with the sense that they are no longer strangers filling a gap with small talk. On the way back to the house, Elena slows her pace for a moment, watching the streetlights come alive against the dusk. The narrator, noticing her quiet mood, matches her slower steps. Without thinking, he offers a small, encouraging smile. She returns it with one of her own, a soft, grateful curve of her lips that seems to say more than words could. When they reach the porch, she thanks him for the walk, her tone warm but tinged with something almost shy. As they part for the evening, the narrator realizes that what lingers with him isn't just her smile or the memory she shared. It's the feeling of having been allowed into a part of her life that few people likely get to see. The keynote ends on that introspective note. The walk becomes symbolic of the slow steps they're taking toward trust, each moment drawing them closer without either of them forcing the pace. The rain finally clears the next afternoon, leaving the air fresh and cool. Low clouds scatter across a pale sunset sky, and the wet leaves along the driveway glisten with hints of amber and green. The narrator stops by to check the patched ceiling. No new damp spots, just a faint stain that will need repainting later. Elena thanks him for coming again, her voice lighter this time. With the storm behind them, the house feels more open, and so does she. Her hair is still slightly damp from having stepped outside earlier, and loose strands frame her face in soft curls. She seems more at ease than in their first meetings, still reserved, but with a gentler edge to her smile. When he's done with the quick inspection, Elena suggests a short walk to enjoy the fresh air before it gets dark. At first, he hesitates, not wanting to intrude on her personal time, but her invitation carries a warmth that makes it hard to refuse. They step outside into the quiet street. The pavement is still dark with rainwater, and a few puddles mirror the soft gold of streetlights flickering on. The evening has that calm, almost suspended quality that comes after a storm, as if everything around them is quietly taking a breath. They walk side by side, not too close, just enough that their shoulders sometimes catch each other's shadow. The narrator notices the faint scent of rain still clinging to her cardigan and the soft crunch of wet gravel under their shoes. Their conversation begins with light remarks about the weather and the stubborn sink, but gradually shifts. Elena shares a story about planting roses in the backyard years ago with her son, describing how the two of them used to compete to see whose plant would bloom first each spring. Her voice softens when she mentions those days, and there's a small, wistful laugh that follows. The narrator listens quietly, picturing the scene she paints. He finds himself admiring not just her memory, but the way her face lights up when she talks about something she loves. That subtle change in her expression feels more revealing than her words. At one point, as they pause near a hedge dripping with leftover rain, she brushes a strand of hair from her face and glances at him with a thoughtful look, not searching for anything, simply present in the shared silence. The air feels charged in a quiet, unspoken way, not with any overt romance, but with the sense that they are no longer strangers filling a gap with small talk. On the way back to the house, Elena slows her pace for a moment, watching the streetlights come alive against the dusk. The narrator, noticing her quiet mood, matches her slower steps. Without thinking, he offers a small, encouraging smile. She returns it with one of her own, a soft, grateful curve of her lips that seems to say more than words could. When they reach the porch, she thanks him for the walk, her tone warm but tinged with something almost shy. As they part for the evening, the narrator realizes that what lingers with him isn't just her smile or the memory she shared. It's the feeling of having been allowed into a part of her life that few people likely get to see. The keynote ends on that introspective note. The walk becomes symbolic of the slow steps they're taking toward trust, each moment drawing them closer without either of them forcing the pace. A week passes without much rain, and the patched ceiling remains dry. One quiet Sunday evening, the narrator stops by again to drop off a small box of paint samples for Elena to choose from, thinking she might want to cover the stains soon. When she opens the door, she looks a little surprised but pleased to see him. She's dressed casually in a soft gray sweater, sleeves pushed to her elbows, and her hair is gathered loosely at the nape of her neck. The house smells faintly of chamomile tea and freshly opened paint swatches, a scent both homey and slightly nostalgic. They sit in the living room, flipping through the paint colors laid across the coffee table, soft creams, pale blues, a few warm earth tones. The late sunlight slants across the room, catching on the glass edges of the picture frames that line the mantel. As they compare shades, their conversation drifts. Elena muses aloud that it's strange how much energy it takes to keep a house looking fresh and new, and how sometimes the effort makes her feel as if she's painting over the years themselves. Her tone isn't sad, just quietly thoughtful. The narrator senses there's more behind her words and lets the silence stretch instead of filling it too quickly. After a long pause, she adds softly, "I used to think I'd always have a house full of people. I never pictured it being so quiet." The statement lingers in the air. She's not asking for pity, but the honesty in her voice feels almost fragile. He responds gently, "Quiet houses can feel heavier than they look." It's a simple sentence, but it draws a faint, appreciative smile from her, the kind that says she's grateful he understood without prying. They move to the window, carrying their mugs of tea. Outside, the garden glimmers in the twilight, the rose bushes she'd once mentioned swaying lightly in the evening breeze. The scene feels peaceful yet tinged with something unspoken. Elena wraps her fingers around her mug, as though drawing comfort from its warmth. Without meaning to, she lets out a quiet laugh. "It's funny," she says. "I called you here for a leaky sink, and somehow you've ended up hearing more about my life than most of my friends." The narrator smiles at that, replying softly, "Pipes and paint are easier to fix than the things people carry inside. I guess I'm better at listening than fixing." That small exchange shifts the space between them. For the first time, their closeness feels mutual and acknowledged, not in any overt romantic way, but as two people sharing a confidence that reaches beneath everyday courtesies. As they stand by the window, their shoulders are just a breath apart. When she points out a rosebud finally starting to open despite the recent storms, their hands almost brush on the sill. Neither pulls away, but neither lingers either. It's the kind of subtle nearness that needs no explanation. The keynote ends as the sky deepens into indigo. Elena thanks him quietly, her voice carrying a depth of sincerity that goes beyond gratitude for the visit. The narrator leaves that night aware that what's forming between them isn't just friendship. It's a trust built on seeing each other's quieter sides. The following weekend dawns with sunlight spilling in after several crisp, rain-free days. The narrator arrives at Elena's house with a small paint roller and a tray of cream-colored paint, the shade she'd finally chosen. The air carries the scent of early spring, damp earth, a faint sweetness from the blooming roses outside. Elena meets him at the door with a half-amused smile. "I thought I'd tackle the ceiling myself, but I suppose you don't trust me with a ladder anymore." Her playful remark eases the air between them, making the morning feel lighter. She's dressed simply in faded jeans and an old button-down shirt she doesn't mind getting paint on. A few wisps of hair have escaped her clip, brushing against her cheeks when she tilts her head. They spread out a canvas sheet in the pantry. The narrator dips the roller into the pale cream paint and starts with long, careful strokes. Elena steadies the ladder for him just as she did before, the quiet teamwork now feeling natural, a rhythm they've fallen into without needing words. Sunlight filters in through the small pantry window, catching specks of dust that swirl lazily in the air. Each stroke of fresh paint slowly covers the old watermark, transforming the ceiling from stained and worn to smooth and bright again. Partway through, Elena climbs up to reach one edge herself. A tiny splash of paint lands on her wrist. She laughs at it, and he instinctively reaches to wipe it away with the edge of a clean rag. The brief touch, his fingers brushing her skin just enough to remove the paint, feels unremarkable yet strangely significant. Both smile at the smallness of the gesture. When the work is done, they stand side by side admiring the newly painted ceiling. There's a shared sense of satisfaction, not just at the job completed, but at the feeling that the house itself seems lighter, as if it has let go of its own quiet sadness. Elena suggests tea in the garden while the paint dries. The two of them sit on a wooden bench beneath the rose bushes. The air carries the mild fragrance of petals warmed by the sun. A breeze shifts a strand of her hair across her face, and without thinking, he gently tucks it back behind her ear, an instinctive, thoughtful gesture. For a brief moment, their eyes meet. There's no need for words, no declaration of feelings. The unspoken understanding is enough. The scene captures the essence of slow-burn romance, closeness born from kindness, not haste. Elena thanks him not just for fixing the sink, the ceiling, and the countless little repairs, but for making the house feel less empty. Her voice is warm, carrying genuine gratitude and something more delicate beneath it, the kind of sentiment that doesn't need naming yet. The narrator responds simply, "You've done more for me than you know." The line hints at how the connection has been mutual, that in helping her home feel whole again, he's also found a quiet sense of belonging. As they finish their tea, the camera, for the imagined YouTube audience, would linger on the two of them sitting close, framed by the sunlight and the soft sway of roses behind them. The story closes not with a grand gesture, but with the gentle promise of a bond that has grown naturally, something steady, hopeful, and ready for whatever comes next. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more slow burn age gap romances, and share it with someone who loves heartfelt storytelling. Your comments mean a lot. Tell me which moment stayed with you the most.